We're back out here once again, and it's the video many of you have been waiting for. That's right, it's my best of baits for the year of 2024. And the best thing about these baits is they can be used by anyone, anywhere. Stick around, you really don't want to miss this one.
Ooh, golly, that's another good one. Whoa, that's a toad. Holy cow, that's a toad. That's a straight toad. Wow, that's a big fish. Come here, buddy. Wow. No, ooh. Whoa.
And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and it's time once again where I count down the best baits of the year. This year was a little bit different in the fact that I was able to keep things very basic. This list of baits is going to work for anyone, anywhere. And a lot of times, well, we have to go outside the box. We have to go crazy with our thinking just to be able to get a bite. Something new, some new trick. But this year, that's not really the case. I was able to use some old favorites and keep things very simple. These baits will work for you no matter where you fish in the country. Whether you're out west, whether you're east, whether you're north, whether you're south, it does not matter. Whether you're fishing grassy lakes, whether you're fishing a lot of hard bottom, it doesn't matter. These baits are going to work for you because they worked for me under all of those different conditions. They worked so well. And the first bait that really worked well for me, well, good old spinnerbait, right? We're going to get started with a great old favorite, just a normal spinnerbait. I didn't use a chatterbait hardly at all in 2024 because, frankly, that bite was just not there the way it had been in years previous. So I switched back to the good old spinnerbait. And as I've said in many videos, 2024 was very much the year of the spinnerbait for me. And it doesn't really matter what fishery you're on. You could be on Okeechobee, you could be on Chickamauga, you could be on any number of lakes across the country. Spinnerbait's going to get bite. And this type of spinnerbait right here, and this is just a Googan Zinger, right? Your standard, typical 3/8 or half-ounce spinnerbait. It's got the tandem blades with the Willow and the Colorado that are chrome. I'm fishing this on those windier days. I'm fishing it when I've got a good bit of current, a good bit of wave action. But I have other choices that I can use as well on slick, calm days or when I don't have as much wind. And maybe there's some good sun out. I can even use something like this. And this is just a regular half-ounce spinnerbait. And it's got those gold or bronze double willow leaves. This was what I would use on those days whenever there was not so much wave action, whenever the water was a bit calmer. And it worked very well. I'm just imitating a small group of bait. That's what a spinnerbait does. It's the original A-rig. And I caught many, many fish on it. But when it came to getting those big bites, those really huge bites, well, that's when I brought this guy out. And this is that painted blade spinnerbait. This is by Strike King. And this has got to be my favorite spinnerbait of 2024. I caught so many 3, 4, 5 pound fish with this bait. And they seem to really like that white painted blade. That's what really seemed to trigger them. It acted a lot like, you know, another little shad. It had that thump. It had that pulse. And as a result, those bass really seemed to migrate toward that bait. As I said, I've caught very large fish on it. And everyone knows if you've been fishing for 5 minutes or if you've been fishing for 50 years, anybody knows the power of a spinnerbait. So it was a great attractant, nice and simple, kept it simple all year long, started throwing them in the spring, threw them in the summer, threw them in the fall, and I'm still throwing them in the winter. So if you're looking for a great all-around, all-purpose bait to cover water, you can work it slow around timber, you can work it along weed edges, and parallel the bank with it. Those girls are going to come up and they're going to inhale that bait. So a spinnerbait is definitely a must-have bait for your 2025 list. Now, next up, well, we've got a traditional type of bait. It's actually a couple of baits, but they fall in that same category, and that is a billed crankbait. This is a smaller, this is a Bandit 200, and I call this a smoked shad type of color. And I don't know what Bandit calls it, but to me, this is more of that smoked shad color. And this little guy was tearing them up all year long. I went with a smaller crankbait, the medium diving crankbait. 6XD or up to a 10 or 12XD, they weren't really doing the damage that they normally would for me, but I went with something smaller amongst all that pressure, amongst all those other anglers who were throwing those larger, deeper diving crankbaits, and this just kept getting hits and pulling those nice bass out of the water. It might look small, but I actually caught some nice 3 and 4 pound class fish with this little bait. So just because it's small, don't underestimate this. If you've got something like a wigglewort or, maybe a Spurl rock crawler, something in those areas, that medium diving bait, something that goes from, say, 8, 10, 12 foot in that area, but it's got that smaller size to it. I'm telling you, 2025, this is going to be another one that works on my radar. It's going to be there, and it's going to be something that I'm using continuously. But I said there were 2 baits. I said that there was another one as well. And that's got to be my favorite square bill, my absolute favorite square bill, the KVD 200. This is a silent bait. It doesn't have any rattles. And on a heavily pressured fishery, like what I have with the Big Lake, when there's 5 and 6 boats in my area at any given time, this is a must. And you can see this poor thing is just so beat up. It's caught so many fish. I've had this thing for years now, and I just keep going back to it. 2024 especially, this thing got crushed more than it ever did. And again, I was catching those really nice fish with it. I'm working right over submerged creek channels. I'm working right along the bank or along weed edges. I'm looking for those hard edges that those bass are going to be attracted to. Again, I tied this on in the spring and I fished it all year. And even up until late fall and early winter, I was still getting some very, very productive bites on this thing. So a silent running square bill, even a balsa bait, something that's got a hard float to it, something that you can burn and then stop, something that you can work in a herky-jerky type of pattern. I'm never just straight retrieving these. I'm always giving them some movement, some added deflection, something that will attract those bass and make them inhale it on that reaction strike. And again, that's going to be another bait that I'm going to have tied on a lot in 2025. It's an excellent bait for any type of fishery. Whether you're fishing from the bank, you can find some places on the bank that have that steeper drop off that a square bill, even a smaller one, will work well for you. So don't hesitate to give that a try, and you're really going to like how well that thing works for you. But another bait, well, this is one that's always on the list, isn't it? It seems to be that every year that old Lowbrow does these lists, and I've been doing these for years now, it's got to be a hard jerkbait. And this is a Yo-Zuri 3DB. This is my favorite jerkbait, along with the old Rattlin' Rogue that's colloquially known as the rat turd, or the cat turd rather. This thing here is an amazing jerkbait. Jerkbaits in general just get bit. If you're only fishing them in the wintertime, you are missing out. I did so much damage with these. I have them tied on all the time. When I head out to the lake, this is a bait I have tied on. This is going to be one that is on that little boat, whether I'm on the bass buggy, whether I'm in that little boat, or what have you. I've got this tied on. Even if I'm working from the bank, I'm going to have a hard plastic jerkbait tied on because they just work. They catch fish, they get bites, and on any fishery in the country, you can tie on a hard plastic jerkbait, and a lot of times you can go down to those 200 size, right? The double hooks, something like that KVD 200 that I really like. Or you can go to a deeper diving one, something like a Perfect 10 Rogue from Smithwick. That's another great one. Or here recently, I've been using that deep diving Thunderstick from Storm. It's not really a jerkbait, but I've been using it like a jerkbait, and it's been working really well. So again, this is a great bait. I have to have it on this list. And as many fish as I've caught this year, as many fish as I've caught with a jerkbait this year, this is only number 3. Number 2, well, it's not going to be any surprise to anyone who's been watching this channel for a while. and that is a weightless soft plastic jerkbait, a Fluke, right? I like the cream. I like those cheap ones that you get at Walmart. For whatever reason, the bass in my area just love these things. They've got a really good glide in the water. And the way that I rig them is with, just a 4/0 or a 5/0 EWG. It's rigged weightless. And I'm fishing these. I'll fish them in 5 to 10 feet of water or less, right up in the hydrilla, right up against the bank. And even now, especially now during the wintertime, this is going to be one of the main baits that I'm using. But in the spring, I got bit on this. In the summertime, when nothing else was working, something like this was doing great work for me. In the fall time, especially when those bass were feeding up for the fall feed, this obviously I had tied on. So this is another all year long bait that will work in any fishery. If you've got fisheries that have deeper water, and I'm talking really deep water, a lot of times what I'll do is, I'll use a small 1/8 ounce belly weighted EWG to get that bait to come down like this. I don't really like doing the nail weight so much on this type of setup because it'll cause it to nose down. And yes, it will go down fast. You'll get that 1 second. It'll drop several feet during that time. But I like the way it gently floats down with that middle fall because it looks more realistic. It looks more like that bait fish is just fluttering down and trying to fight for its life. So I've caught so many fish lately on these. You guys have seen me working these around the boat ramp, which is a prime spot in the wintertime. Your favorite brand, Caffeine Shad, a Zoom Fluke, or what have you. Maybe some smaller brands, maybe some mom and pop brands. But a soft plastic jerkbait definitely has to be in your arsenal. If you're only going to tie on one bait all year long and try to catch fish with it, this has got to be in the running for that, as well as our number one bait. So what's the number one bait for 2024? What's the number one technique presentation for 2024? Well, if you watch this channel, you know what it is. It has to be this bait. I've caught more fish on this particular presentation than probably everything else combined all year long. It started in January of last year and it ran all the way through into December. And that is, the Waco rig. I know a lot of guys are tired of hearing about this. And believe it or not, I catch so much heat for this thing. A lot of guys tell me, oh, it's not a real thing. Oh, it's a pretend thing. It's something you made up. Well, yeah, I did make it up. They say, well, it's a weightless this. And these are the same guys who come back to me later after they've tried it out and tell me this is the most amazing thing they've ever fished, that they didn't think it was going to work, but it just catches fish. So give this a try. I'm telling you, this I've got rigged with a Zoom trick worm. This is one of my favorite ways to do it because that small EWG hook, and I've got that nail weight right there. I've got it pushed in, just that 1/16 ounce tungsten nail weight pushed into that egg sac with the point facing down. And the reason I do that is because I like to skip these. These skip really good, so I like to skip them under brush. It's a weedless, wacky rig that fishes a lot like a wacky rig, a soft jerkbait, a regular jerkbait. You tap it on slack line, almost like you would a weightless Fluke, and it just gets inhaled. Another way that I like to fish it, and another way that's super, super effective, is with a regular 5-inch stick bait, a Senko, right? Any type of color. This is a black blue flake. This is what was working for me last time I was out. Green pumpkin also works. White works. Bruised banana, sweet potato. All of those colors work well with this because it looks like something that's alive whenever you're working it. The mimic of the action is just so lifelike that it really gets the attention of those bass. So if you haven't tried the Waco rig, if you scoff at it and you think it's a joke, prove me wrong. I'm challenging you. Fish this in 2025 and you'll see just how amazing that setup really is. So there you have it. My top baits and techniques for the year 2024. Try them out. I'm telling you, they are great baits that keep things simple and catch tons of fish. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.